The night was cold and the city smelled of smoke and metal. A human man named Daniel walked alone through the narrow streets, his steps careful, his eyes sharp. This alien city was not a place for humans to wander freely. Most aliens looked at humans with suspicion or greed, and Daniel knew one wrong step could mean trouble. He pulled his coat tighter around him and kept his head low. Neon lights flickered on the sides of broken walls. Alien signs glowed in strange languages he could barely read. Shadows moved everywhere. Merchants packing up their stalls, beggars, whispering for food, guards stomping through the mud. Daniel just wanted to pass through, finish his trade business, and leave before dawn. But then, from a dark corner, someone whispered his name. Human. His body froze. His hand instinctively touched the small blade on his belt. Out of the shadows stepped a tall alien woman, her skin pale with faint patterns glowing across her arms, her eyes sharp but tired, and in her arms she held a small child. Wrapped in rough cloth, Daniel frowned, ready to push past her. But the woman suddenly dropped to her knees. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Please, take me and my child. Take us as your concubine." The words cut through the night like a blade. Daniel blinked, thinking he had misheard. "What?" The woman's eyes glistened with desperation, her hands trembling as she held the child tighter. "Claim us. Say we belong to you, or they will take us, they will kill my son." Daniel stepped back, his heart beating fast. He was a traitor, not a savior, and certainly not someone who would own another being. "Why me?" he asked in a low voice. "You don't even know who I am." The woman lowered her head. "Because you are human. They fear humans more than they admit. If you claim me, even as a concubine, they will not dare take us." The child stirred in her arms, weak and thin, his face pale from hunger. His small fingers clutched at her torn clothes, and Daniel felt a strange ache in his chest. He wanted to turn away, wanted to pretend he had not heard her, but the desperation in her voice clung to him. From the distance, heavy boots echoed. Alien guards patrolling the street, their weapons glowing with blue light. The woman's breathing grew quick. "Please, if they see me, they will know I escaped. They will drag me back to the cages." She pressed her forehead to the ground before him, a sign of complete surrender. The child let out a soft whimper, and Daniel's hand tightened on his coat. He whispered, sharply, "Get up, before they see you." But the woman stayed down, whispering again, "Please, human, save my child. I beg you." Daniel cursed under his breath, his mind racing. He had seen the cages earlier in the market, rows of women and children behind iron bars, their eyes empty, their hope gone. He remembered the merchants laughing, shouting prices as if they were selling cattle, and now one of those women stood before him, not broken yet but on the edge of despair. The boots grew louder, shadows stretched across the street, the guards were getting closer. Daniel made a choice, one that would change his life forever. He pulled the woman up roughly and placed his arm around her shoulders as if she already belonged to him. "Stay quiet," he muttered, his voice cold. The woman gasped but obeyed, clutching her child to her chest. As the guards turned the corner, their glowing eyes scanned the street. One of them paused, staring at Daniel. "Human, what are you doing in this district?" Daniel tightened his grip on the woman, forcing a confident smirk. "Walking with what's mine." The guard's eyes moved over the alien woman and her child, then back to Daniel. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. The woman's body trembled under his arm, and the child pressed his face into her chest to hide, but then the guard let out a sharp laugh. "Humans, always taking what they want." He spat on the ground and walked past with the others, their heavy boots fading into the distance. Daniel finally let out the breath he had been holding, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide with both fear and hope. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel shook his head. "No, I just bought myself a lot of trouble." But deep inside, he knew the truth. Something about that desperate plea, about the child's weak face, had touched a part of him he thought he had buried long ago. The night no longer felt empty. It felt heavy, as if fate itself had just placed a burden on his shoulders. The woman clutched his sleeve, her words soft but firm. "From now, we are yours." Daniel wanted to argue, to refuse, but the words stuck in his throat instead. He just looked at her, then at the child, and silently wondered what kind of storm he had just stepped into. And as the cold wind blew through the dark city streets, he knew one thing with certainty. This was only the beginning. Daniel walked fast through the crooked streets, the alien woman and her child staying close at his side. The city was still awake, though it was late. Glowing signs flickering, alien music echoing from taverns, strange smells of food and smoke filling the air. But Daniel's mind was not on the city. His mind was on the woman's words, her plea, her desperate eyes. The little boy stirred in her arms, his small hands weakly moving, his lips dry. The woman whispered to calm him, but Daniel noticed the boy's eyes, dull and tired. The way a starving child's eyes looked. "Is he sick?" Daniel asked sharply, glancing at her. The woman shook her head, clutching the boy closer. "Not sick. Hungry." The word cut deep into Daniel's thoughts. Hungry. He looked again at the boy's thin arms and fragile body, and a quiet anger stirred inside him. In this alien city, wealth and food were displayed everywhere. Merchants selling roasted meats, spiced drinks, bright fruits. But this child, just a child, had nothing. Daniel stopped near a small food stall. The merchant behind it was an insect-like alien with long arms and clicking mandibles, his sharp eyes watching Daniel with suspicion. Daniel pulled a small coin from his pocket. "Human trade credits, rare but accepted." "Bread," he said simply, pointing. The alien merchant hesitated, then laughed. "Human coins? You think I trade for junk?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He placed 2 more coins down, his stare cold and unblinking. The merchant paused, then snatched the coins with a greedy hand and shoved a piece of rough bread at him. Daniel grabbed it and turned without a word. The woman's eyes widened as he handed her the bread. She tore it quickly, small pieces for her child first, pushing them gently into the boy's mouth. The child chewed slowly, his eyes closing as if even this small food was the sweetest gift. Daniel watched silently, something heavy pressing in his chest. The woman finally took a small bite herself. Careful, slow, almost guilty. When she looked up, her eyes glistened. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you help us?" Daniel shrugged, his voice low. "Because I can't stand watching a child starve." The woman lowered her gaze, whispering almost to herself. "Humans? Different from what I was told." Before Daniel could reply, a loud crash sounded from the alley ahead. Shouts followed. Alien voices, rough and angry. The woman tensed, clutching her child tightly, her body trembling. Daniel's hand went to his, belt again gripping his blade, his eyes narrowing. From the shadows stepped 3 alien thugs, tall and broad, their eyes glowing faintly. Their armor dented but dangerous. One pointed at the woman. "There. That's her. The escaped one." The woman gasped, stepping back, her arms tightening around her child. Daniel stepped forward without thinking, placing himself between them and her. "Back off," he said firmly, his voice steady. The aliens laughed, their sharp teeth flashing. "Human, you dare claim what belongs to the market?" One sneered. "Step aside or we take you too." Daniel's grip tightened on his blade, but he didn't draw it yet. His mind raced, 3 against 1, no chance to win an open fight. He glanced at the woman, her wide, fearful eyes, the boy clutching. Weakly at her neck, running was their only chance. "Stay behind me," Daniel whispered, then suddenly shoved a barrel near him down, spilling foul-smelling liquid across the street. The thugs cursed, stumbling back, and Daniel grabbed the woman's arm, dragging her into a narrow side alley. They ran, their footsteps echoing, the child's small cries mixing with the shouts. Behind them, the city twisted around them like a maze. Narrow streets, hidden doors, shadows everywhere. Daniel led them through turn after turn, using every shortcut he remembered, until finally the voices faded into the distance. They stopped in a quiet corner, the woman gasping for breath, the child whimpering softly. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing hard. The woman sank to her knees, holding the boy close, tears sliding down her face. "I told you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They will never stop. They will hunt me until I am chained again." Daniel knelt in front of her, his voice calm but firm. "Then we don't let them catch you." The woman looked up at him, her eyes shining with both fear and a fragile hope. "Why would you risk this?" she asked. "You could walk away and be safe." Daniel was silent for a moment, then said, "Because I can't walk away anymore." His voice was heavy, carrying something from his past, something he didn't explain. The woman studied him, as if trying to understand. The child tugged weakly at her sleeve, whispering with a dry throat, "More food." The mother held him tighter, her heart breaking. Daniel stood slowly, looking at the glowing city beyond. "We'll find more food and a place to hide," he said firmly. "But you must tell me everything. Why they hunt you, why you begged me." The woman hesitated, her lips trembling, then nodded. "I will tell you, but you may not believe me." The cold wind blew through the alley, carrying the distant sound of guards and laughter. Daniel stared into the darkness ahead, knowing the path he had stepped onto was dangerous, maybe even deadly. But he also knew one thing. He could no longer turn back. The woman's desperate plea, the child's hunger, had already chained him to their fate, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. This night had started as just another trade, but now it was becoming something far greater, something he could not escape. The morning sun rose slowly over the alien city, its light blocked by tall steel towers and heavy smoke drifting through the sky. Daniel had not slept, his eyes red from keeping watch through the night. The woman and her child slept curled together in a corner of the abandoned storeroom he had found, their breaths shallow but calm. When the boy stirred, Daniel handed him the last piece of bread he had saved. The child chewed silently, eyes grateful, and the woman whispered a soft thank you, her voice carrying both relief and shame. Daniel only nodded, but inside he felt the weight of their situation grow heavier. He knew hiding them would not be enough. The thugs would search every corner, and the guards would be watching. To understand what he was truly facing, he needed to see the source of this nightmare with his own eyes. The market where she said she had been caged by midday. The streets filled with noise, merchants shouting prices, animals crying, steam rising from food stalls, and in the distance, a sound that made Daniel's stomach twist, chains clinking, iron gates clashing, and the faint cries of voices that no one cared to hear. He walked slowly toward the sound, the woman following with her hood pulled low, the child clinging tightly to her. And then they saw it. The market of chains, rows of cages made of steel and bone stood in the center, guarded by large alien warriors. Inside the cages, women of different races sat on the ground, some silent, some sobbing, some with eyes empty of all life. Children huddled together, their small hands reaching out for food that never came. Daniel's jaw clenched, his fists tight at his sides. He had seen poverty before, he had seen cruelty before, but this was slavery dressed as business. Alien merchants shouted loudly, waving papers, offering bids as if these women and children were nothing but goods. The woman beside him trembled, her breath shallow. "That is where I was," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That is where they wanted my son." Her hands shook as she clutched the boy closer, her eyes full of old fear. Before Daniel could answer, a loud voice shouted from a stall, "Look, the escaped one has returned." Daniel's heart sank. A merchant with 4 arms and yellow eyes was pointing directly at the woman, his face twisted with greed and anger. He shouted again, "That female is mine. She belongs to the cages." The crowd turned, eyes narrowing, voices rising. The guards began to move, their heavy boots echoing as they approached. The woman gasped and pressed against Daniel's side, the boy burying his face in her chest. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low but sharp. "She belongs to me." The merchant laughed, his teeth sharp and dripping with black spit. "You lie, human. No record shows her sold to you." He slammed a paper against the stall. "She escaped from my lot, and I will have her back, or you will pay the price." The crowd cheered, some mocking, some eager to see violence. Daniel's hand went to his blade, but he did not draw it, not. Yet his mind raced. He could not fight the whole market. Not with a child to protect, but he also knew backing down now meant losing her forever. He locked eyes with the merchant, his voice steady. If she escaped you, then you never owned her. She chose me, and now she is mine. Gasps spread through the crowd, whispers rising, some aliens sneered. But others looked uneasy. Few ever challenged a merchant so boldly, and fewer still were human. The merchant's face darkened, his arms trembling with fury. You dare defy market law? Then prove your claim. In the ring. He pointed to a circle of stone at the edge of the market, a fighting pit stained with old blood. The crowd roared with excitement, their voices echoing, "The ring! The ring!" Daniel felt the woman's hand grip his sleeve tightly, her eyes wide with fear. "You cannot," she whispered desperately. "They will kill you." Daniel looked at her, then at the child, then back at the pit, his jaw set, his voice calm but unyielding. "If this is the only way to protect you, then I will fight." The crowd pushed them toward the ring, the guards forming a circle. The merchant grinned, already choosing his champion, a massive alien brute with skin like stone and arms like hammers. The crowd cheered louder, betting on how fast the human would die. Daniel stepped into the ring, the dust rising around his boots. He had fought before, on Earth and on distant stations, but never like this. Never with so much at stake. He knew the fight would not just decide his life. It would decide the fate of the woman and her child. The woman clutched her son, her lips trembling as she whispered, "A prayer." The child peeked out, his eyes wide with both fear and fragile hope, and Daniel, standing tall in the ring, whispered under his breath, "I will not let them take you." The bell clanged, the crowd screamed, and the massive alien lunged forward. The fight had begun. The ring shook with the roar of the crowd. Daniel stood tall, blade in his hand, staring at the massive alien brute across from him. The creature's skin was rough like stone, its yellow eyes burning with hunger for blood, its fists larger than Daniel's head. The merchant shouted, "Break him! Show this human what market law means." The crowd screamed with excitement, stomping their feet, shaking the ground. The brute charged forward, its steps heavy, the dust flying around it. Daniel waited until the last moment, then sidestepped, swinging his blade across the creature's arm. A line of dark blood spilled, and the brute roared in rage. The crowd gasped, surprised the human had even landed a strike, but the fight was not equal. The brute swung again, faster this time, and Daniel barely rolled aside. The ground cracking where the fist landed, pain shot through his shoulder as dust stung his eyes. He forced himself up, panting, heart racing. From the edge of the ring, the woman held her son close, whispering desperately, "Please, survive." The brute came again, swinging wildly. Daniel ducked, stabbed the blade into the brute's side, and twisted. The creature howled, staggering, but it was still strong, still dangerous. The merchant screamed with fury, "Kill him! Tear him apart!" The brute swung its massive arm, and Daniel was thrown to the ground, his blade skidding away. The crowd roared with laughter, expecting the end. The woman's scream pierced the air. "Daniel," the child's small voice followed. "Don't die." Daniel's body ached, his vision blurred, but those voices dragged him back. He forced himself up, blood on his lips, and faced the brute again, his voice steady, though his body trembled. "You won't touch them." The brute lunged again, but Daniel moved quicker this time. He ducked low, grabbed the blade, and with all his strength drove it deep into the brute's chest. The monster froze, its eyes wide, then collapsed with a thunderous crash, shaking the ring. Silence fell, the crowd stunned. Then, slowly shouts rose, half in anger, half in disbelief. "The human won, the human won." The merchant's face twisted with rage, his arms shaking. "This means nothing. He cheated, But the guards cut him off, their eyes uneasy. "Market law is clear," one said, his voice cold. "The human has claimed her. She is his now." The merchant spat black saliva, furious but powerless. Daniel stood in the center of the ring, breathing hard, his blade dripping with dark blood. He turned and saw the woman's tear-filled eyes, the child's small smile of hope. He had won, but the danger was far from over. The guards let them go, but the crowd's whispers followed. "Who is this human? Why protect her? They will hunt him now. Daniel knew they were right. Winning the fight had not ended the danger, it had only painted a bigger target on his back. He grabbed the woman's hand, guiding her quickly away from the ring, through the twisting alleys of the city. She clutched, her son tightly, still trembling, whispering thanks over and over. Daniel kept his eyes sharp, his voice low. "We can't stay here. We need to disappear." They moved through the crowded streets, pushing past merchants, beggars, and drunks, but Daniel felt eyes watching, following. The merchants' thugs would not give up so easily. "Faster," Daniel muttered, pulling them into a narrow passage between two crumbling buildings. The woman gasped, "Where are we going?" "To a place they won't search," Daniel replied, though in truth he wasn't sure himself. They weaved through hidden paths, over broken fences, down stairways covered in grime. The city seemed endless, a maze of metal and shadows. Every sound made the woman flinch, every shout made the child cling tighter. At last, Daniel found an old service tunnel, half buried under rubble. He pushed aside the debris and motioned them in. The woman hesitated, staring into the dark tunnel. "It's dangerous." Daniel looked at her firmly. "It's safer than the streets." Inside, the air was damp and cold, water dripping from rusted pipes. The tunnel stretched into darkness, lit only by faint cracks above where sunlight leaked through. The woman carried her son, her steps slow, her breathing heavy. Daniel stayed ahead, blade in hand, eyes sharp. They walked for what felt like hours, until finally the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. Old crates and broken machines lay scattered. A place long abandoned. Daniel checked quickly. "No signs of life, no footsteps, no sounds. This will do for now," he said. The woman set her child down gently, covering him with her cloak. Then she turned to Daniel, her eyes full of both gratitude and fear. "You risked everything for us," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Why?" Daniel leaned against the wall, silent for a long moment, his eyes dark, remembering something from his past, something painful. Finally, he said softly, "Because once I couldn't save someone, and I swore I'd never make that mistake again." The woman studied him, her heart pounding. She lowered her head, whispering, "Then maybe fate sent you to us." Daniel didn't reply, but his grip on the blade tightened, because he knew the fight was far from over. The market would not forget, the merchant would not forgive, and soon others would come. But for now, in this hidden place, the woman and her child were safe. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something he had long buried. A reason to fight, a reason to protect, a reason to live. The echoes of the crowd still haunted his ears, the memory of the brute's fall still heavy on his blade, but his mind was already preparing for the next step, because survival in this city was not about winning one fight. It was about escaping the chains forever. The hidden chamber was cold and damp, but it gave them shelter. Daniel sat against a broken crate, his blade resting on his knee, his eyes scanning the shadows. The woman sat nearby, her child asleep in her arms, his small breaths soft and uneven. For a long time, only silence filled the place. The woman's gaze kept flicking to Daniel, as if she wanted to speak but was afraid. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice low, trembling. "You deserve to know the truth." Daniel turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Truth? About what?" "About me," she whispered, "and why they hunt us." Her hand shook as she adjusted the boy's cloak, tucking it around him. "I was not always a slave, not always broken. Once I was the wife of a warrior, one of the highest of our kind." Daniel's brow furrowed, her voice cracked as she continued. "He was a commander, loyal to our people, feared in battle. He protected me, protected our son, until one night." Her eyes filled with tears, shimmering in the dim light. They betrayed him. His brothers turned on him, murdered him, and called it justice. They took everything, our home, our wealth, our honor, and they put me in chains. They, said a widow without a strong male, had no worth. They laughed as they caged me. They would have taken my son too, but I ran. Her voice broke completely then, and she pressed her forehead to her child's small head. Daniel's jaw tightened, anger rising inside him. Not at her, but at the cruelty she had endured. "So that's why you begged me," he said quietly. She nodded, her tears falling. "If a male claims me, the law protects me, even if it is only as a concubine. I begged you because I had no choice. I would give up everything, my pride, my freedom, my body, if it means my son lives." Her words struck Daniel hard. He stared at her, at the thin woman holding her child like her entire soul depended on it. He had thought she begged from fear, but now he understood. It was love. A desperate, wild love of a mother who would rather be shamed than watch her child die. For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Memories stirred in his own chest, memories of another child, another face, long gone. He swallowed hard, his voice thick. "You shouldn't have to beg for survival." The woman looked at him, her eyes red. "Then why did you help me? You could have left me to the cages. Why did you risk everything?" Daniel hesitated, his fingers tightening around his blade. Finally he spoke, his voice low and heavy. "Because once, I had a family too." The woman blinked, her breath catching. Daniel continued, his words slow, as if each one was a wound, reopening. "I failed them. I wasn't there when they needed me most, and I swore, never again would I walk away when I could protect someone." The chamber was silent, the sound of dripping water echoing around them. The woman whispered, "Then maybe fate tied us together." Daniel looked at her, his eyes sharp but softened by something he hadn't felt in years. "Fate or not," he said firmly, "no one will touch your son while I'm breathing." The woman's lips trembled, her tears falling freely now. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt the faint spark of safety. She bowed her head deeply, whispering, "Then I am yours. Not as concubine, but as one who owes her life. I will follow wherever you lead." Daniel said nothing, only nodded. But deep inside he knew he had crossed a line. This was no longer about trade, no longer about a passing choice. He had stepped into her battle, and there would be no turning back. The child stirred, his small, voice weak. "Mama." Hungry. The woman rocked him gently, her heart breaking. Daniel stood, sliding his blade back into its sheath. "I'll get food," he said, his tone firm. "Stay here. Don't move." The woman's eyes widened. "No, it's too dangerous. They're searching everywhere. If they catch you." Daniel cut her off, his voice sharp but steady. "If I don't, your boy won't last the night." For a moment they only looked at each other. Then the woman nodded slowly, her hand brushing her son's hair. "Come back to us," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel gave a faint smile, the kind of smile a soldier gives before battle. "I always come back," he said, though deep inside he knew the city was a predator, and one wrong step could end him. He slipped out into the dark tunnels again, the faint glow of the alien city. Waiting above, behind him, the woman held her child tighter, whispering to herself over and over, "Please let him return, please." And in the silence of the abandoned chamber, her tears fell on her son's hair, but for the first time in a long time, they were not tears of only despair. There was a small, fragile hope now. The hope that maybe this human was the shield fate had finally sent them. The night pressed heavy on the alien city, neon lights glowing in the fog, voices echoing from taverns and guards patrolling with weapons at their side. Daniel walked fast, hood pulled low, his blade hidden beneath his coat, his mind focused on only one task, food for the boy. He had faced death in the ring and survived, but this mission felt even more dangerous. If he failed, the child would starve. At a busy market corner, Daniel spotted a stall selling dried meat and fruit. The merchant, a reptilian alien with scales shining under the neon light, eyed Daniel with suspicion. "Human," he hissed, "you show your face here after the ring. Brave or foolish?" Daniel placed a few trade coins on the counter, his voice steady. "I'm just here to buy." But whispers spread quickly. "That's the human who defied the market law. The one who stole the escaped woman. Kill him, before the merchant's men find him." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. The reptilian merchant hesitated, then shoved the food at him and snatched the coins. Daniel grabbed it and turned to leave. But 3 large shadows blocked his path. It was the merchant's thugs, the same ones who had hunted him in the alleys before. Their leader grinned, teeth sharp and yellow. "We knew you'd come crawling. Back into the open, human." Another cracked his knuckles. "The master wants her returned. Hand over the woman and the brat, and maybe we let you live." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "Not happening." The thugs laughed, their voices loud, drawing attention from the crowd. "You think you can protect her forever? She's a slave, nothing more." Something snapped inside Daniel. He stepped forward, his voice like steel. "She is not a slave. Not while I'm alive." The crowd gasped. No one spoke against the market law so boldly. The thugs sneered, anger flashing in their eyes. "You'll regret those words, human," the leader growled. Lunging forward, Daniel moved fast, faster than they expected. His blade flashed under the neon light, slicing across the leader's arm. The thug howled in pain. Stumbling back as blood sprayed, the other 2 attacked, one swinging a heavy pipe, the other rushing with claws outstretched. Daniel ducked the pipe, drove his elbow into the attacker's chest and slashed his blade across the second one's thigh. The crowd roared, some cheering, others shouting for blood. The thugs regrouped, fury in their eyes. But Daniel stood firm, chest heaving, blade ready. His voice cut through the noise, sharp and fearless. "Tell your master this. She and her son are under my protection now. Anyone who tries to touch them will answer to me." Silence fell for a heartbeat. The crowd stared, stunned by the human's boldness. No one, not even aliens of power, defied the market so openly. And here stood one man, alone, daring to declare war with only his courage and a blade. The thugs snarled but didn't advance. One spat on the ground, his eyes burning with hate. "This isn't over, human. The market never forgets." They retreated into the shadows, their footsteps echoing like a promise of revenge. Daniel exhaled slowly, his body tense, his blade dripping blood. He turned back to the stall, grabbed the food, and vanished into the crowded streets before more guards arrived. When he returned to the hidden chamber, the woman jumped to her feet, her eyes wide with fear. "You're hurt," she gasped, seeing the blood on his sleeve. Daniel shook his head, setting down the food. "Not mine." The boy's eyes lit up at the sight of the dried fruit, his small hands reaching eagerly. The woman tore pieces for him, tears filling her eyes as he ate with joy. She looked back at Daniel, her voice trembling. "They will come for us. You know this, don't you? By standing up to them, you've made yourself their enemy." Daniel sat heavily on a crate, his eyes steady. "I was already their enemy the moment I claimed you in the ring. There's no going back, so if they want to fight, they'll get one." The woman's lips parted in shock. He spoke not with fear, but with certainty. Her heart ached at his courage, and for the first time in years she felt the fragile warmth of hope. She bowed her head deeply, whispering, "Then may the stars protect you, Daniel." "Because now you protect us." Daniel leaned back, closing his tired eyes. He didn't believe in stars, not anymore, but he believed in promises, and he had made one. Her son would live, even if it cost him everything, above the hidden chamber. The city hummed with danger. Whispers spread like wildfire. The human defies the market. The human protects the widow. The human will die. But Daniel sat in the shadows, his blade resting beside him, his mind calm. He was no longer just a traitor passing through. He had chosen his stand, and soon the city would learn what it meant when a human refused to bow. The city was never quiet, not even at night. Shouts echoed from taverns, chains clinked in the slave markets, and patrols marched through the streets with heavy boots. But inside the hidden chamber, Daniel sat with his blade across his lap, watching the woman and her child sleep. He could not rest. He knew the merchant's men were out there, hunting, waiting. By dawn, the boy stirred, rubbing his tired eyes, his stomach still. Empty though he had eaten, the woman kissed his forehead, whispering soft words, then looked at Daniel, her eyes worried. "They will come soon," she said, her voice low. "The merchant won't stop until we're back in his cages." Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we don't wait for him to come. We make our move first. The woman frowned, confused. What do you mean? Daniel stood, pulling his coat on, checking his blade. If we stay here, we die. If we run, they'll hunt us. So the only way is to face them, to show the city they can't take you back. Her eyes widened. That's madness. You're only one man. Daniel's voice was firm, unshaken. One man is enough when he refuses to bow. Before she could argue, heavy footsteps echoed outside the chamber. The boy clung to her, whispering, "Mama, they're coming." Daniel stepped forward, blade ready, his eyes sharp as steel. The door burst open. 6 of the merchant's thugs stormed in. Armored and armed, the leader grinned, his yellow teeth glowing in the dim light. "Human," he spat. "Your little game ends now. Hand over the woman and her brat, or we drag your corpse through the streets." The woman held her son tightly, her eyes wide with terror, but Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "She and the boy are mine, under my protection. You'll have to kill me to take them." The thugs laughed, their voices echoing. "Gladly," the leader snarled, raising his blade. The fight erupted, fast and brutal. Daniel moved like a storm, his blade flashing, striking before the thugs could react. One went down with a cry, clutching his bleeding arm. Another swung at Daniel, but he ducked low, driving his blade deep into the alien's chest. The woman gasped, pulling her son back, shielding him from the sight. But she could not look away. This human fought not like a traitor, but like a warrior. Every strike, every move carried purpose, and every word he had spoken, that he would protect them, was carved into his blade. The fight was not easy. One thug's weapon sliced across Daniel's side, blood soaking into his coat, but he did not fall. He roared in anger, striking harder, faster, until the thug lay broken on the floor. Soon, only the leader remained, his eyes burning with hate. "You think you've won, human?" he growled. "The market will never forgive this. The city will spit you out. You can't protect them forever." Daniel wiped blood from his face, his blade steady. "Maybe not forever," he said coldly, "but long enough to make sure you never touch them again." With one final strike, Daniel cut the leader down. The chamber fell silent, only the sound of dripping water and the woman's heavy breathing filling the air. She rushed to Daniel, her hands trembling. "You're bleeding." But he shook his head, wiping his blade clean. "I've bled before. What matters is, you're free now." Her tears fell, hot and fast. She fell to her knees, clutching his hand, her voice breaking. No one has ever fought for me like this. Not since my husband. You gave us back more than life. You gave us dignity." Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft for the first time. "You're not mine," he said gently. "Not a slave, not a concubine. You're a mother, and he's a boy who deserves to live free." The woman sobbed quietly, holding her son close. The boy looked up at Daniel with wide eyes, whispering, "Are you my protector now?" Daniel knelt, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder, his voice calm. "Yes, as long as I live, no one will hurt you." The boy smiled faintly, for the first time in weeks, and the woman's heart swelled with something she had not felt since her husband's death. Hope. When they stepped out of the hidden chamber, the city's whispers followed them. The human defied the market. The human fought the thugs. The human protects the widow. Fear spread through the crowd, because if one human could stand against the chains, perhaps others could too. The merchant's power cracked that day, and Daniel, walking through the streets with the woman and her son at his side, felt something settle deep inside him. He had come to the city as a traitor, but he left it as something else, a protector, a fighter, a man bound not by blood but by choice. The woman looked at him, her voice soft. "You gave us life when all was lost." Daniel shook his head, his voice steady. "No, you gave me a reason to fight again." And as they disappeared into the rising dawn, a new bond had been forged. Not of chains, not of ownership, but of loyalty, of trust, and of hope that, even in the darkest places, humanity could shine.